My name is Elizabeth, and I thought I had it all. A loving husband, 2 beautiful children, and a fulfilling job. My husband, James, and I had been together for over a decade, and we always supported each other through thick and thin. Our children, Emily and Noah, were the light of our lives. Life had seemed like a fairy tale. James and I had built a strong foundation of love and trust. We had shared dreams, ambitions, and a deep commitment to our family. Our home was filled with laughter, warmth, and a sense of belonging. One evening, as the sun set and cast a golden glow across our cozy living room, James and I sat on the couch, lost in conversation. Our children played nearby, their laughter filling the air. "Elizabeth, you are the love of my life," James said, his eyes sparkling with affection. "Every day spent with you and the kids is a blessing." I smiled, feeling the warmth of his words envelop my heart. "And you, James, you're my rock." I couldn't imagine a life without you by my side. We shared a tender moment, holding each other's hands, cherishing the love that had grown stronger with every passing year. Our children, sensing the connection between their parents, rushed over, wrapping their tiny arms around us. "Daddy, Mommy, I love you!" Emily exclaimed, her eyes shining with innocence. James chuckled and ruffled Noah's hair. "We love you too, my little superheroes." In that moment, surrounded by the love of my family, I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Life had truly blessed me with a picture. Perfect family, and I cherished every precious moment we shared together. Little did I know that the tranquility of our perfect family would soon be shattered and the strength of our bond would be put to the ultimate test. It started as an innocent workplace compliment. Mr. Thompson, my boss, would casually mention how well I was doing on a particular project or how impressed he was with my ideas. At first, I brushed it off as a kind gesture, a recognition of my hard work. But soon enough, those compliments turned into something much more sinister. One afternoon, as I sat at my desk, engrossed in my work, Mr. Thompson approached me. He leaned against the edge of my cubicle, a sly smile playing on his lips. "Elizabeth, you never cease to amaze me. Your dedication and intelligence are truly remarkable." I glanced up, a hint of unease in my eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I appreciate your kind words." He took a step closer, his voice lowering to a hushed tone. "You know, Elizabeth, I've noticed how you stand out among your colleagues. You have a certain charm, a beauty that's hard to ignore." My heart began to race, my discomfort growing with each passing moment. "Mr. Thompson, I think it's best if we keep our conversations professional." He chuckled softly, the sound sending shivers down my spine. "Of course, Elizabeth, professional. But let's not deny the chemistry between us. It's palpable." Fear gripped me as I realized that Mr. Thompson's intentions were far from innocent. His comments had crossed a line, invading my personal space and making me question my safety within the workplace. In the following days and weeks, the harassment escalated. Mr. Thompson would make inappropriate remarks about my appearance, linger near my desk for no apparent reason, and seek any opportunity to be alone with me. I felt a constant sense of unease, always looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next incident would occur. One day, as I gathered the courage to confront him, I found myself alone in his office. The air was heavy with tension, and I could feel his gaze lingering on me. I took a deep breath, my voice trembling. "Mr. Thompson, I want you to stop this harassment. It's unacceptable, and I won't tolerate it any longer." He smirked, his eyes filled with arrogance. "Oh, Elizabeth, don't be so uptight. I just want to have some fun. No one will believe your word against mine." My heart sank, but I refused to let fear overcome me. "I'll make sure that everyone knows the truth, Mr. Thompson. I won't let you get away with this." With that, I gathered my courage and stormed out of his office, vowing to take action and put an end to the torment I was enduring. The days had become a living nightmare. Mr. Thompson's harassment had reached a boiling point, leaving me feeling trapped and terrified. But on that fateful afternoon, as the weight of his unwelcome advances bore down on me, I found the strength to escape. It was a gloomy Tuesday, the air heavy with tension. As I walked into Mr. Thompson's office for what I hoped would be a routine meeting, I could sense something was off. His gaze lingered on me a little too long, his eyes filled with a sinister desire. He closed the door behind him, a smirk spreading across his face. Elizabeth, I think it's time we take our relationship to the next level. Don't you? My heart pounded in my chest, my fight or flight response kicking into high gear. Mr. Thompson, I've made it clear that I'm not interested. This needs to stop. He took a step closer, his voice dripping with malice. You can't resist me forever, Elizabeth. I'll have what I want, one way or another. In that moment, I knew I had to act swiftly. I had to escape his clutches before he could carry out his heinous intentions. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I made a split-second decision. As he lunged towards me, I ducked and swiftly moved towards the door. Panic consumed me as I fumbled for the doorknob, praying that it would open. With a desperate twist, the door swung open, revealing the empty hallway beyond. I bolted, my heart pounding, my legs carrying me as fast as they could. The echoes of Mr. Thompson's enraged shouts filled the corridor, fueling my determination to escape his grasp. Fear and adrenaline propelled me towards the stairwell, my only path to freedom. As I descended the stairs, I could hear his footsteps echoing behind me, but I refused to let him catch me. I pushed myself harder, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My mind raced, searching for a solution, an escape route that would lead me to safety. Finally, I burst through the door, emerging into the daylight. The fresh air filled my lungs, a welcome respite from the suffocating atmosphere I had endured. I sprinted towards the parking lot, the sound of my own footsteps drowning out the world around me. In that moment, I realized that I had escaped the clutches of my tormentor. The weight of his harassment no longer held me down. I was free, but the battle was far from over. After my harrowing escape from Mr. Thompson's clutches, I knew I couldn't bear the burden of this secret alone any longer. I needed to confide in someone I could trust completely. And so, that evening, as the weight of my ordeal threatened to consume me, I decided to share my deepest pain with my husband, James. The house was quiet as I sat on the edge of our bed, my hands trembling with a mix of fear and vulnerability. James walked into the room, concern etched across his face. He sensed something was amiss. "Elizabeth, what's wrong? You don't look like you've seen a ghost," James said, his voice laced with worry. Tears welled up in my eyes as I took a deep breath, mustering the strength to speak. "James, something terrible has happened. I've been living a nightmare at work, enduring harassment from Mr. Thompson." His eyes widened with shock, his hand instinctively reaching out to hold mine. "Oh my God! Oh my God, Elizabeth! Why didn't you tell me earlier? You always. I squeezed his hand, finding solace in his unwavering support. "I was scared, James. Scared of the consequences. Scared of what he might do if I spoke up. But I can't bear it any longer. I need your help." His voice was filled with determination as he leaned closer. "Elizabeth, you're not alone in this. We're a team. Tell me everything, and together we'll find a way to bring him to justice." With a mixture of relief and trepidation, I shared the painful details of the harassment I had endured at the hands of Mr. Thompson. James listened attentively, his face contorted with anger and empathy. "This ends now," James declared, his voice filled with resolve. "No one should ever have to suffer through what you've experienced. We'll fight for justice, Elizabeth. We'll make sure he pays for what he's done." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Thank you, James. I don't know what I'd do without you." He pulled me into a tight embrace, his arms offering a shield against the pain. "We're in this together, Elizabeth. Always remember that." In that moment, a renewed sense of strength washed over me. With James by my side, I knew I could face anything. We had a long road ahead of us, but we were determined to seek justice and ensure that Mr. Thompson faced the consequences of his actions. With the support of my husband, James, we embarked on a daring plan to expose Mr. Thompson and seek justice for the torment he had put me through. We knew that it wouldn't be an easy task, but we were determined to bring him down and prevent anyone else from suffering at his hands. James looked at me, his eyes filled with determination. Elizabeth, we need solid proof to bring him to justice. We can't rely solely on our words against his. I nodded in agreement, my mind racing with ideas. We need to gather evidence that exposes his true nature, something that can't be brushed aside or denied. As we brainstormed, we contemplated various approaches. We discussed setting up hidden cameras in my workspace, but we knew it would be risky and potentially illegal. Then, a light bulb moment occurred. What if we secretly record a conversation between him and me? I suggested, a flicker of hope igniting within me. If he lets his guard down and reveals his true intentions, it could be the proof we need. James smiled, impressed by the idea. That's brilliant, Elizabeth. We'll find a way to make it happen. We need to ensure your safety during this process. We can't let him suspect anything. Days turned into weeks as we meticulously planned our strategy. We procured a discreet recording device, ensuring it was small enough to go unnoticed. James coached me on how to engage Mr. Thompson in conversation, subtly steering it towards topics that would provoke revealing responses. The moment of truth arrived. It was a nerve-wracking day as I walked into the office, the recording device hidden carefully in my pocket. James waited anxiously for me at home, ready to analyze the captured conversation and use it as evidence against Mr. Thompson. As I engaged in conversation with him, I carefully steered the discussion towards his inappropriate behavior. With each passing word, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I needed him to reveal his true nature, to expose the monster that lurked beneath his professional facade. Finally, the moment arrived. Mr. Thompson's guard slipped, and he made a damning statement, confirming his malicious intent. With bated breath, I excused myself and left the room, heart pounding, but also filled with a sense of triumph. Returning home, I handed the recording device to James, who eagerly connected it to his computer. We listened together, our hearts heavy with the weight of the evidence we had gathered. It was undeniable proof of Mr. Thompson's harassment and misconduct. "We have him, Elizabeth," James said, his voice filled with satisfaction. "This is the leverage we need to ensure he pays for what he's done." A sense of justice and relief washed over me. We were one step closer to our goal of exposing Mr. Thompson's true nature and seeking retribution for the pain he had caused me. With the damning evidence in hand, James and I knew it was time to confront Mr. Thompson and make him face the consequences of his actions. The weight of anticipation and anxiety hung heavy in the air as we walked into his office, determination fueling our every step. Mr. Thompson glanced up from his desk, surprise etched across his face. "Elizabeth, James? What brings you here? Is there something I can help you with?" I took a deep breath, my voice steady but filled with a quiet resolve. "Mr. Thompson, we have something important to discuss. We have undeniable evidence of your harassment, and we are prepared to take it to the authorities unless you do the right thing." His face paled, a flicker of fear crossing his eyes. "You can't do that. Think about the consequences it will have on my career." James spoke up, his voice laced with anger. "You should have thought about the consequences before you started harassing my wife. We're done playing your game, Mr. Thompson. It's time for justice." Mr. Thompson attempted to regain his composure, his voice strained. "This is a misunderstanding. I never intended to harm Elizabeth. It was all just harmless flirting." I stared at him, my eyes filled with disappointment and disgust. "Harmless? There was nothing harmless about it. Your actions were unwelcome and crossed the line. We have proof, Mr. Thompson, and we're prepared to take legal action." The room fell silent, the weight of the moment palpable. Mr. Thompson realized he was cornered, his desperate attempt to maintain control crumbling before him. He sighed, resignation seeping into his voice. "Fine, you win. I'll do whatever it takes to make this go away. Just please don't ruin my life." I looked at James, our shared resolve unwavering. We won't ruin your life, Mr. Thompson. But you need to understand the gravity of your actions. Harassment is never acceptable, and we expect you to change your behavior. He nodded, a mix of shame and defeat evident on his face. I promise, I'll seek help, and I'll never harass anyone again. Please, just let me salvage what's left of my career. With that, James and I left his office, a mix of relief and sadness washing over us. While we had achieved our goal of bringing Mr. Thompson to account, we couldn't shake the lingering sense of sadness that his actions had caused. The price of revenge became apparent in that moment. It wasn't just about the satisfaction of exposing him. It was about the toll it had taken on all parties involved. We were left grappling with the impact it had on our own lives and the ripple effect it had on our own lives and the ripple effect it had on Mr. Thompson's future. The weight of our actions hung heavy as James and I navigated the aftermath of our confrontation with Mr. Thompson. We knew that justice needed to be served, but we also grappled with the repercussions it would have on his life and career. However, we were determined to see it through and ensure that he faced the consequences of his harassment. The day of reckoning arrived as we received news that Mr. Thompson had been terminated from the company. The evidence we had gathered had proven to be undeniable, forcing the company to take swift action. It was a bittersweet victory, as we felt a mix of relief and sympathy for the repercussions he faced. In the midst of the turmoil, I received a call from a local law enforcement agency. They had been notified of the situation and were launching an investigation into Mr. Thompson's misconduct. They requested my cooperation in providing a statement and any additional evidence that could aid in their case. Nervous but resolute, I agreed to meet with the investigators. Sitting in the interrogation room, I recounted the details of the harassment I had endured, providing a first-hand account of Mr. Thompson's actions. They assured me that they would do everything in their power to ensure justice was served. Days turned into weeks as the investigation unfolded. James and I patiently waited, hoping for a resolution that would bring closure to this painful chapter of our lives. Finally, we received news that Mr. Thompson had been charged with harassment and would face a trial. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the trial commenced. I took the stand facing Mr. Thompson and the judgment of the court. The prosecution presented the evidence we had gathered, including the recorded conversation that had captured his damning admission. During cross-examination, the defense attempted to undermine my credibility and cast doubt on my accusations. It was a challenging and emotionally draining experience, but I remained resolute in my pursuit of justice. In a climactic moment, the jury returned with their verdict. Guilty. Mr. Thompson was found guilty of harassment, and the weight of his actions finally settled upon him. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and satisfaction as justice had been served. As I stepped out of the courtroom, a sense of closure washed over me. The nightmare I had endured had come to an end, and I could finally start rebuilding my life. James stood by my side, his unwavering support a constant source of strength. "We did it, Elizabeth," James said, his voice filled with pride. "You showed incredible bravery throughout this entire process." I smiled, feeling a newfound sense of empowerment. "We did it together, James. Thank you for standing by me every step of the way." The road to justice had been arduous, and the scars left behind were deep. But we had achieved our goal, not only for ourselves, but for others who might have fallen victim to Mr. Thompson's harassment. We hoped that this case would serve as a deterrent and bring about a safer and more inclusive workplace for all. With justice served, we could now focus on healing and moving forward, knowing that we had made a difference. The journey had been challenging, but we emerged stronger and more determined than ever to fight against harassment and stand up for what is right. And so, as we walked away from the courthouse, hand in hand, we embraced the future, filled with hope.